tonight's international correspondent, Adefemi Akinsanya, who is covering the 80th session of the UN General Assembly, joins us now from New York for updates on the United Nations General Assembly. Thank you for joining us, Adefemi. How are you doing today?
Good morning, Omobolanle. I'm doing great. It's wonderful to hear your voice. I hope you're both doing well. Good morning to you. Good morning to you, Nii.
Indeed, we're doing well. Well, we know that the theme for this year's United Nations General Assembly is Better Together. And let's look at what makes this year's theme so significant, 80 years of celebrating the United Nations General Assembly.
Thank you, Omobolanle. Well, as you rightfully said, the theme of this year's United Nations General Assembly is building our future together. And when you're looking out across the world, you will struggle really to find areas where there isn't examples of tensions, geopolitical tensions, of all-out conflict, of course, across the Middle East, in Eastern Europe, on the African continent. There are lots of examples of unity, essentially holding on by a thread. So it is quite fitting that you're seeing the United Nations stake this landmark assembly on the theme of unity, on the optimism of future, of staying alive and staying alive together. So that's what we're seeing. Now, when we're looking at the significance of this edition, it is quite significant because this is 80 years. So in and of itself, it is quite a long period of time. And if we cast our minds back 80 years to 1945 and compare the state of the United Nations back then as it is today, you can see there's a vast difference, especially when we're looking at the presence and the participation of African countries. We simply were not included, simply were not considered in 1945. And so fast forward 80 years later, we can see that the relevance and the influence of Africa continues to be undeniable. However, that also needs to highlight the areas for more progress, more respect, more inclusion for Africa, because we do and we can also understand that as it stands now, there is a lot of understanding and optimism surrounding Africa, but clearly there are areas where the respect across African countries and what they contribute to the world order needs to be highlighted, needs to really improve. So when we're looking at the theme of unity, especially in terms of what it means for Africans and Nigerians specifically, it is definitely going to be looking at how unity can bring in countries and parts of the world, especially the global south, that felt disenfranchised, not included in matters that directly affect it. So it is a very historic moment. It's something that we spoke about with the Deputy Secretary General Amina Mohammed during our interview. And while we can see that, yes, looking across the world, there's a lot of conflict, a lot of distrust, protectionism, political violence, we can also see that there are definitely elements of progress, especially where we are stood here today. Now, today, really of the official high-level week, and high-level week is really where you'll see very senior politicians, advocates for change from all over the world, lots of different business leaders, public sector, private sector, coming together to find resolution, look for examples of collaboration. And what we are seeing under the umbrella here at the Global Africa Business Initiative is the first day of Unstoppable Africa. And that is quite significant because it does talk about and describe Africa as quite literally being unstoppable. And with the flurry of people being here, that is just going to be illustrated throughout the mechanism of this event. There's a lot to be looking forward to.
Indeed, Femi, with so much volatility in the world today, so the theme is actually pivotal and apt, if you don't mind me saying so. So it's still on the high-level week, which begins today. What do Nigerians and Africans alike need to know regarding the Security Council, debt forgiveness, environmental concerns, and or whatnot, you think?
Oh, thank you, Nii. So firstly, if we're looking at this as Africans, but specifically Nigerians, you'd need to know that when we're looking at the iconic address of state leaders, of country leaders addressing the United Nations General Assembly for Nigeria, that's expected to take place on Wednesday. And it's going to happen late in the evening, New York time, around 8:30 p.m., which would translate to it being around 1:30, 2:30 a.m. Nigerian time, West African time. So that in and of itself is a bit of concern because it is nice and it would be an example of consideration when when, global countries, especially African countries, are able to watch and see their leaders address the world in a good time. So that's what we're going to be seeing there as it stands now. We do know that it is the Vice President of Nigeria, Kashim Shettima, who will be leading the presidential delegation. He will be representing President Bola Ahmed Tinubu, just as he did last year. Last year, the president did not attend the UN General Assembly in person. That will continue to be the case this year, and it will be left in the able hands, we believe, of the Vice President. Now, it is believed that he will be making an appearance very soon. He will be, of course, delivering the remarks to the United Nations General Assembly on Wednesday, but ahead of that, he will be participating in a host different events. He is, as I said, leading a delegation that includes honorable ministers, including the Minister of Industry, Trade and Investment, Dr. Jumoke Oduwole, as well as the Minister of Health, the Minister of Digital Economy, Bosun Tijani, who is already in New York, has already hosted a series of events on Friday and Saturday, and will continue to participate in side events throughout this coming week. Just shows that when we're looking at the federal representation of Nigeria, this is something that is very serious. And Nigeria is actually hoping to achieve, well, we can expect that they're going to be delivering remarks that look at, first and foremost, security. When we're talking about the state of the world and the conflicts around the world, it is apt and it is needed at a point that we have Nigeria being able to, or African countries being able to, viably participate in issues that affect them directly. As it stands, on the UN Security Council, there is no African permanent member. The 5 countries on there are represented by the United Kingdom, the United States, China, France, Germany. These are, of course, quote-unquote developed countries, but these are countries that are going to be discussing issues that do not directly affect their own countries. And this is why, for years, there have been clamoring, there's been efforts, there have been drives for a global South country to occupy a permanent seat on the UN Security Council. Now, there have been calls for 2 seats to go to Africa. Nigeria would like one of them. And we are expecting that when he does address the General Assembly, this is something that he may well mention. Another thing he will mention should be debt forgiveness. This also took up the lion's share of his comments last year. Again, when we are looking at domestic news within Nigeria, that is the comment that we are hearing over and over again. Nigeria's ballooning debt profile and its inability, the hampering it means for Nigeria to keep it away from being able to develop at a rate that it does. So discuss debt forgiveness. But in addition to that, one thing that he may expand on that he didn't do so last year would be the inclusion of the importance of the environment. Again, looking at domestic news headlines in Nigeria, we are seeing flooding being an issue, especially across the north of the country, absolutely in the south of Nigeria. Being in Lagos, you are not a stranger to seeing the flooding that happens when it rains. So it is going to be expected that the Vice President will continue to talk about the importance of environment in his remarks and also in his presence in different events across the week as he is going to be here. But there is definitely going to be a lot of questions really about what specifically the metrics are going to be for Nigeria's success. What resolutions are you hoping to find? What deals are you hoping to do here? How transparent are you going to be with telling Nigerians what they can expect from your presence in this event, at this event? So we'll just have to wait and see. But there is a lot of anticipation.
There is a lot to look forward to. There is a lot to look forward to indeed at the high-level session that will be taking place at this year's United Nations General Assembly. But I'd like to know what you think about the impact of the US-led politics, especially on the participation of certain countries in this year's edition. Thank you so much, Adefemi Akinsoya, for the rich update you brought to us from New York, where the United Nations General Assembly is taking place.